everybody, and welcome to the Ocean Impact Podcast. My name is Amelia Helt and I'll be one of your co-hosts for today. Welcome to our Pitchfest 2021 series where we chat to the founders behind these incredible startups. But I'm joined today by my co-host, the man with a mission, Tim Silverwood. Hi, Tim.
Hi, Amelia. Gee, this was a fascinating episode, this one. I'm really enjoying this series, and it just reminds us of how powerful the Pitchfest campaign is in shining a light on incredible innovators and entrepreneurs doing amazing things for planet Ocean.
So true, Tim. And I think that that's probably a good little segue to just mention to everyone that pre-registration is officially open for Pitchfest 2022, and it's going to be back and bigger than ever. So people can in fact go and pre-register and get the scoop for what is going to be probably our best yet Pitchfest.
Yeah, can't wait. It's a really good opportunity just to express your interest now, get your details down so you're the first to know when the big news arrives on the prizes, the new award categories, the new partners, and of course those key dates for Pitchfest 2022.
It's such exciting stuff, and as we mentioned, we do have one of these incredible founders. It's Adam Root from Matter. Matter are a microplastic technology company focusing on the capture, harvest, and eventually recycling of microplastics. And they stop microplastics from ever entering the waterways by capturing microfiber shedding from synthetic textiles, which, by the way, at home, 700,000 microfibres are released into the ocean after every machine wash. That's just in the home. So Matter are doing a really great job at creating solutions for both the home, for business, and also for industry, all of the places where, microfiber shedding is an issue. Tim, he's just such a fascinating guy, an engineer, and I loved this conversation and learning about how he kind of worked through his solution.
Oh man, I love this one. I mean, you can probably tell if you're listening to all these episodes, the ones that really trigger me to go deep and challenge the guest. And on this occasion, I just had to because I've obviously been working in the plastic pollution space for 15 years. And we haven't really had anyone who's been quite the pioneer of new technology and new approaches to address microfibers and micropollutants like we have Adam Root and the work that he's doing. We didn't mention in the podcast, this guy used to work directly with Dyson, James Dyson directly. He was one of a team of engineers, mechanical engineers working at Dyson. He's had a very distinguished career, this chap, but just felt this enormous call to action to do something about this emerging problem when he realized how widespread microfiber pollution, microplastic fibers were in the ocean. What really shocked me, there's so many things that took my breath away in this one, but when he was talking about the sewage systems and that naturally you collect these gigantic amounts of sludge at the end of the sewage treatment process, they can just be deployed onto farmland, yet they contain the most ginormous levels of plastic pollution, microplastic pollution, let alone the chemicals and drugs and medicines. And it's just like, oh my God, how backward are we as a species that we just allow this to happen blindly? So I found this episode so fascinating.
Yeah, there was so many takeaways, and Adam is exactly the kind of person who I think of when we talk about innovation at OIO and making your imagination or your ideas a reality. Now, obviously, he's an engineer, and yes, he was a senior designer at Dyson, but ultimately, he was able to work through and realize his idea with a grant of £250 and some materials from Prince's Trust. Plus his dead washing machine, which also came into it. And he does talk about this story. Point being, you don't always need a lot, and sometimes innovation is about being scrappy but purposeful. And that was a huge one for me. Is that if he can do it with £250 and some materials and a dead washing machine, there's nothing stopping anyone from testing their ideas, and making them a reality.
Yeah, look, I think that's a really good point, Amelia. And, maybe some people are of the impression listening to these episodes or looking at that startup that gets recognized in Pitchfest as being so impossible to achieve that. You just got to listen to Adam's story and how raw and how tough he and his wife had to do it whilst they were building this business. He does open up, and I find those nuggets are so valuable if you're a founder or if you're thinking about being one. So, yeah, I'd listen to this one twice if I was a founder, because you're going to find there's going to be some really good nuggets in there.
100%. So, everyone, enjoy this episode. Let us know your thoughts. As always, you can leave a review or a comment. Make sure you're checking it out on YouTube if you want to be able to actually see the conversation. And don't forget that you can pre register now for Pitchfest 2022. The URL for that is ocean-impact.org/Pitchfest 2022. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. I'm really excited to have on the Ocean Impact podcast Pitchfest 2021 series Adam Root, who is the founder and CEO of Matter. How are you today, Adam?
Hey, good morning. Lovely to see you guys.
It's nice if you're watching this video. Adam's al fresco in a very sunny morning in Bristol, and the sun has just gone down where I am in Byron Bay in northern New South Wales, Australia. But we're here to talk about the incredible work that you and your team are doing to address the major ocean challenges. So why don't we go straight to it, Adam? Tell us a little bit about the problem that it is you're trying to solve and how you're doing it.
Yeah, sure. I think fundamentally, so I founded Matter, which is a microplastic technology company. So we focus on the capture, harvest, and recycling of microplastics. Um, Microplastics is one of the most prolific sources of pollution on the planet, but people know very little about it or the effects. But I think most people understand that our oceans are super important to effectively be the life support system of planet Earth. They produce a huge amount of our oxygen, up to 80% of the oxygen in our air. They sequester more carbon than all the trees on Earth combined. So for us, what we're doing is removing some of the tiniest little particles which are entering at the bottom of the food chain. Things like phytoplankton and zooplankton are eating ingesting small pieces of plastics. And there's a mixture between some of the chemicals that are involved in the production of those plastics, as well as how they combine with other parts that's going inside the animal and the organism, and causing detriment and harm throughout the whole food chain. So we're working on that. That's really a big part of what we do.
Yeah, and not just in those creatures out there in the environment, of course, in us through what we breathe and what we drink and what we eat. So it is a diabolical problem. Let's go back a little bit, I suppose, to when you had your aha moment or your call to action. Tell us a little bit about what you were doing and how Matter came to be.
Yeah, sure. So I suppose it's probably from the beginning why it's probably worth explaining a little bit about my background as well. Just kind of put a bit in context. So I'm a mechanical engineer by training. I've worked for some of the biggest companies in the world, specializing in. I worked for GE doing big industrial projects. And I used to work for Dyson doing new product development and new product innovation. And I was getting to the stage where I really was making quite big impact in the companies I worked in, and decided that I think looking at producing, I never really worked on anything less than like 1 million units a year when I was working for Dyson, so high volume production, high volume products, and I really wanted to make a big impact, and was looking particularly at oceans, and I think I'm a keen scuba diver, and I think there's a lot of stuff happening in the ocean plastic space that I was seeing happening. It's in international waters. It's very difficult to kind of work in those spaces. And I figured that, I've got some good skill set and I wanted to use my superpowers for good, if you like. And really, I just sat down with a blank sheet of paper and was like, okay, so where are all the big pollution sources? What do they look like? Where are they coming from? And then from that, I started identifying the major sources of pollution. What does that look like? And for me, it was really based on the numbers. So synthetic textiles is the number one polluter by number of particles entering the ocean. And I was like, well, that's got to be where I start. So that was really the foundational piece for me, was really about understanding the numbers, focus on the impact that you can have, and then I got a small amount of resource and time, and apply that to have the biggest impact possible. And that was really what we were looking at.
It's fascinating. I can just imagine you doing that exercise and doing a bit of a scientific review and analysis, and then finding out that textiles were so dramatic. I mean, I've been in the plastic pollution space since about 2007, 2008, and I still remember that revelation that came out when Five Gyres were doing their research and coming up with those giant figures of 5.25 trillion pieces of plastic floating in that upper level of the water column. And then when the science started coming out around the benthic layers and what was happening with fibers, and there was people were scratching their heads. So yeah, what did you do once you found out the figures on those synthetic textiles, and obviously using your design skills and your experience? Where did it sort of send you in terms of how you could actually start to create something which could contribute to being part of the solution?
Sure. So I suppose I was at that time I was unemployed. I didn't have a lot of money. I don't come from money as somebody, so like relatively limited resources really. The intention was me and my wife were going to take a bit of time out, and we were going to cycle from Norway to Italy, and we got a couple of weeks in and broke some bones, ended up coming back. And so basically we were at that stage where we were like, had very little resources. I was living at Becky's mum and dad's parents' house, and we were like, okay, well, you've got these big ideas, and how are you going to turn them into reality? So the first thing I was doing was kind of when I came back, and I went on the Prince's Trust. It's a charity based in the UK, and they specifically help young people between 18 and 30. And I was on a 5-day business course with them, and that was my only training really for this. You get at the end of that, you get up to £125 to what they call a Will It Work grant. So it's a little bit of money for like people who are um, who are like trying to start, if you're trying to start a hairdressers or a salon or something like that, where you get, some money for some leaflets to try your idea out and see if it works. And so I pitched into them guys for £250. So it was double the amount that I was supposed to ask for. And I asked for some materials to basically build a rig to capture microplastics from washing machines. And that was because of the pollution sources. That was because I looked at those places, and I had this concept and this idea that I thought that you could use some technology that I was kind of playing around with the idea of basically looking at microfiltration but without disposable parts. And that was really what I was looking at. Because I think the first thing I noticed is that there's loads of filtration mechanisms on the planet currently exist. Most membranes and regular stuff, which I kind of knew about. But all of those ultra filtration systems that are capable of capturing micro pollutants are disposable. So if you're going to capture micropollution and you're going to use disposables to do it, you're going to generate more waste than you save. So it was really, really obvious right from the beginning that if you want to do something positive, you've got to do it that way. So I got the grant, I got the money, and I basically cut up I had an old washing machine that mysteriously died in the house, and so I started disassembling that. I cut up a couple of buckets and basically proved that you could capture microplastics from this little technique that I was kind of working on. My first rig was literally a couple of buckets and some plastic tubes, and from that, I knew that there was something there. And that's where things really started coming on for me. That was when I was like, okay, how far am I going to take this through? So it was never really about the business. It was never really about looking at market sizes or anything like that. It was more the fact of like, here's a problem. I think I can solve it. What does that look like? Is it possible? So I think that's really where I started.
So fascinating, Adam. And the people that listen to this podcast are diverse, but obviously OIO works with companies all the way through from being non-existent and just an idea in someone's notepad right the way through to scale up. So I would love to just hear a little bit more about that journey that you went through in turning your piece of paper to going and doing a 5-day course to getting that £250 very small grant, like what were some of the lessons or what's some advice you can give to people out there about if they're at that stage, they've got a desperate burning desire to want to do something, but they just don't quite know how to get started? Like, give us a little bit more sense of what that part of your journey was like. Sort of like, we get a lot of, we run like ideation programs and everything. So I think that little part of your journey will be something that people will find really fascinating. So just, like things like, how did you sustain yourself? Like, how did you know you were on the right track? Like, just go a little bit deeper through that part of your journey, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sure. I think so. I suppose there's a few things in here. I mean, there's some really sensible ways of starting businesses, and there's some really not sensible ways of starting businesses. Lots of people go in it softly, and they keep their current job, and they try it in the evenings or weekends, and they talk about this idea of a side hustle. That that is a great way of doing it, like softly, and to go for this way. At that point in my life, I'd quit my job. My wife quit her job. We had some savings that we saved on for we had a couple of £1,000 that we were going to get us through the first couple of months of cycle touring, and then we were going to look for jobs and maybe like au pair or dog sit or do some things. We were very up for just seeing how things went, and um, I think I just had so much energy at that point, and I mean, I still feel like that. I still get up in the morning. There's so much energy I have that I just feel I need to put it into something. And we were like, oh, I don't really know what's going on or what we're going to do or how this is going to work. And so at that time, I thought I'm going to start a company. And in the UK, it's actually incredibly easy to start a company. So we have a really great system for this. You can start a limited company in about 15 minutes by clicking a few buttons. It's terrifying. You can just click through and get through. I know in Germany it's a very different thing, and different places around the world it can be really challenging. But the UK, you literally just go on company's house, you can fill it in and do it. And so I started a company. I started what was called Oshietai Limited, and it was a street food business. Actually, was where I started. Me and my wife. I know it's a bit of a sidetrack, but me and my wife, we were going to do. The idea was that we were going to do a street food thing where we got the ingredients on the Friday, we sold it on the Saturday, and we had the cash in the bank on Sunday that we could go and like live off of. That was the concept behind it. So we were doing that. We were doing basically okonomiyaki and like Japanese food. It was something that I was super passionate about, kind of trying to do something fun, and we were doing those things. So that was sort of the idea or the concept about how to make some money, and then we were going to try to live off of that, and go through. At that time, I'd pretty much sold everything I owned anyway. Like, we had no furniture. I had 6 boxes, which was in a garage in my wife's parents' house. We're looking for somewhere to live, and um, my Becky's mum and dad were really great, and they said they didn't mind us coming to stay with those guys. So that I wasn't paying any rent. I'm really lucky with that. That was a really amazing thing. And the idea was it was supposed to be a couple of months, and we just see what happens, and then kind of move on and get our stuff together and figure that out. So my bills and outgoings were about £100 a month at that point in my life. So financial stuff is really important, and I was ready for the financial strain. What I was not ready for was the mental strain. I'd gone from working in a room with 800 engineers to being just myself. I'm quite a people person. I'm quite involved in that. The mental strain was significantly harder than anything I thought it was going to be. So I think I'm really lucky to have the support network. My wife, we've been together since I was 14. She knows me better than I know myself in most ways. So we were a little team, we were a little duo. I'm a sole founder of the business, which is hard. That's really hard. I basically did most things the hardest way possible. And it was not through intent. It was just the fact that I didn't know what I was doing at all. I just started at that time. I was just phoning people up, trying to look at what they were doing and figure out if I could go along and help them. I phoned a couple of people up, and I was like, try to work for other people. I was not interested in starting my own business. And I just found that the more I spoke to people that were in the impact space, most of the people were either grant funded or they were pretty happy with a tiny little business and being like, this is exactly, I've got my little thing and it's going okay and I don't really want to grow. And, there's 2 or 3 of us and we're doing all right. There was nobody really out there going, we're going to change the bloody world and we're going to get on and do that. And the only person I really kind of was looking at that time was just about as Ocean Plastic was really kicking off was the ocean cleanup project with Boy and Slat. And I sent him a few emails. I tried to get in there in the Netherlands and it didn't work. I didn't get any responses. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to just have to start something. So it was really it was very organic. It was not planned in any stretch of the imagination. And looking back, it makes loads of sense of exactly what I did. But I learned a lot of the business side through Oshiato through the street food business. I learned, we'd go one day, we'd come out, we'd sell 250 covers in a day in like a 2-hour slot at lunchtime, and we'd make a couple of grand. And then the next day, we would make a loss, like a huge loss. And it was so weather dependent. I mean, in the UK, street food is just like, if it's raining, nobody comes out, and you could be sitting there with like 200, 300 portions of food. Luckily, Becky's mum and dad have got chickens who love noodles. It was okay. We kind of made it happen. But at one point we were doing 3,000 eggs a week, 800 kilos of cabbage. It was not what I planned. There was a little moment when with the street food business me and Becky were doing Sony is the company doing their 25th birthday. So we had this massive party that we were organising for hundreds of people, and we had 8 staff, or we'd close to with people helping out and doing all these things. And I had to get on a plane to represent the UK for research and development at the G7, and I was like, I'm sorry, I've got to go. And then we were like, what are we doing shredding cabbage when we're both super talented? And it was amazing. It was fun, but yeah, there was a lot happening in my life at that period of time. I don't know if that kind of helps, Tim. Share a little insights.
No, thanks, mate. Thanks for opening up. And okay, so we've learned about your hustle with the food truck. We discovered that you've done a bit of a prototype for your filter. So take us forward, I suppose, to when the rubber really started to hit the road, so to speak, and you started building the team and taking the business to the next level. Maybe this is a good opportunity to talk a little bit more about the business, what you're doing currently, what you've been doing in the past, and what you hope to be doing in the future.
Yeah. So I suppose there's 2 major steps. So one of it was there was a point where we were like, right, okay, we can't do the street food business anymore. We physically can't do it. My wife has got her own business too. She does graphic design, and I started doing engineering consultancy at that time. And the real big traction piece for us, I suppose, for me in particular, so I applied for an Innovate UK grant. We that was a pretty significant chunk, moving us forward into that. So that was a couple of £100,000 that we applied for, and really the reason why that come about was because I won Young Innovator of the Year award in the UK. So I won an award. I got £5,000 for that. I got some mentorship, and also I got some PR coverage. And the PR was the biggest influence. I was on Sky News, and they put, inventor wants to save the world kind of tagline, and we got a load of interest. And basically a washing machine manufacturer come up to us and said, yeah, we're interested in what you're doing. We want to work on a project. We would like to use a government system to do that. Let's work together. And, I lost the first one, won the second one. We got the grant, and then we got a year-long project. And April the 1st, 2019, the project started, and I took on 2 employees. And that was a big thing for me. And we were effectively being paid through this Innovate program, the government grant. And it was, the guys knew that it was high risk, but it was a year-long project. It was enough capital to run for a little while. And yeah, that period of time, I had that. Then I had our first VC sort of approached us and said, "This is really exciting. We'd love to be part of this. Let's be part of that." that happened, and everything just started spiraling really, and we went from 0 to sort of 10 people within a year. So that happened really super quick. Um, from that, now I think we're probably around 20 people, 25 people, depending, if you include contractors or what day of the week it is. We're getting to that stage as a business. So Matu looks at 4 major sections as a company. So we have GULP, which is our D2C side of the business. So it specializes in we're developing products which are going to help people. We know the climate crisis is coming. We understand that things are going to change for people. We're going to need more resilience in our homes, and we're going to need products that have real impact. And GULP is our first product we're launching from this. So this is a retrofittable washing machine filter. If you go to gulp.online, you'll be able to pre-order one of these. So we're currently selecting manufacturing partners and going through that process of building supply chain. And we're manufacturing this product ourselves for a contract manufacturer. And it's a filter that plugs into your washing machine, plugs straight back in the back, and you can put this integrated into your home. So if, you want to put this below the sink or on top of the washing machine or wherever kind of the normal places that you put your washing machine. This will extract the microplastic from the washing and allows you to wash your clothes without having the impacts. If you've got sportswear, you're not going to have that impact. Things like PFAS and other things, chemicals that are attached to the waterproofing, those particles, those fibers become trapped inside the filter and don't get out. We are moving on to, we've got another part of the business where we're working with global washing machine manufacturers to install that technology we've developed inside the machines. So when you buy a new washing machine, it will come included with Matter technology, which we're super excited about that. Very busy. And it's a licensing model, which is B2B, very profitable. And also, most importantly, it's really big impact. And then the 2 phases that we're currently growing into is the material side. So one of the unique things about our filter is that rather than embedding all the material inside a trapped membrane where you then have to dispose of it, those filters where it's embedded, our filter system is the material sits separately, so we separate out the material from the rest of the product, so you can extract it and then you can send it back to us. So we're working on the recycling schemes for how you turn some of that material into a new value stream, which we think is really important to truly close that loop. And then the final part of that is Matter Industries. So we're currently scaling up our technology. I'm building a 1 million litres of water a day version of my product in our labs, and that allows us to work with large textiles manufacturers or other segments. There are lots of pollution sources, and it allows us to work with those parts as well.
Is the technology that you've created, is it rocket science? Is it that difficult? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about it. I suppose the other side of that question is, does it annoy you that washing machine companies hadn't tackled this problem sooner? Because I'm sure they probably knew about it.
Yeah. So that's a really interesting point, and I think it's a fine line, because obviously I run a business, and it's good for us for business that we can develop something that's unique and that people can't do it with. I think there is this relationship with water currently that we think of it like it's a consumable, like you kind of use it and throw it away and discard it, and it's sort of like it's complete, like that process is finished. There's water on our planet that's been around since before the dinosaurs. It's a crazy concept to think that our water is so circular in the way that it normally is in a natural environment. And a lot of companies, and pretty much most of the water space, is regulatory. It's just driven by the law, and the law is so far away from what happens in nature. We are quite literally spending the future abilities for this. It's crazy. And to give an example of this, in the UK, we have this law called PAS 110, where you can legally spray sewage sludge, which is the output of a wastewater treatment plant. You can spray that onto fields. You can legally put 1 plastic bag's worth of plastic per square meter onto that field. That's directly onto the food. and then that then would run off and goes into the river and the oceans. So those kind of practices are incredibly frustrating because it's hampering innovation. Because why would they innovate? Why would they do it? They're like, we're making loads of money. Like, why would we spend? So in the UK, it might be 20-25 pound a ton to dispose of this. In Europe, it's 85 to 135 euros a ton because they have to incinerate it. It's illegal to do that process because it's so full of pharmaceuticals and everything else. It's also really regional as well. So there's some huge challenges we face, and I think people often think that innovation and technology will save the world. I mean, that is true if the adoption is there, and I think the adoption really is about there needs to be people making big decisions to do that. I mean, luckily, the reason why we're working so heavily in washing machine space is because there's law from 2025. You have to have a filter fitted in your machine. It's also in Australia. You guys are cracking on ahead. You'll be pleased to know that you won't be able to buy a washing machine without a microplastic filter very soon. So Matter will be coming to a town near you. We'll be coming and doing some good work in Australia. I'm looking forward to coming out and seeing you guys. I think there is drive for this. We're seeing regulation sweep across the planet, but this is an assumption that the people who are in government are, they're biologists and technologists, and they're not. These guys they're politicians, and they don't understand this. And a lot of our work is about educating these people. And as soon as you provide the tools and help them, that they want to move quickly and they want to do something positive. So I think it's down to all of us to act in the best way possible. And I think that regulation will drive a lot of the changes, but it's one of the slowest things to move. But once it happens, it's a massive effect.
Two kind of follow-on questions from that. That was really fascinating. Thank you. One of them was around, how much of your time and energy and your team do you sort of have to then find yourself spending on lobbying and that education piece for policymakers. But a quick one was about when those legislations are coming in, and how have you gone about sort of protecting your IP and what does that mean? I mean, is it a free market for these filtration systems to come into new washing machines, or is there only a handful of players that are in the space?
Yeah. Okay. So the first part really about how much time we spend in legislation. So it's not quite nice to talk about the beginning of part of the matter because it kind of puts everything in context. So I mean, I was sitting down with that blank sheet of paper, going, okay, how do you solve these problems? And I all approached it from a cradle to cradle perspective. That's my closest thing I have to a Bible. It's the principle of how you design systems. How do you design? Like, design is the first signal of human intention. I love this quote from Bill McDonough, and it's the concept of looking at like where this is and how this is working. And the thing that I really identified straight off very early was three things. You need research and development, education, and legislation. Education is fundamental to solving this problem. People need to understand it. These kind of things are absolutely critical. What you guys are doing, educating people, is incredibly important. That then leads on to public will and drive, and it wants to move into legislation space. And they always, the first thing they say is the technology is not there. How do we get the price down? We don't want to regulate something that hampers business and pushes that in place. And the research and development really is about developing those new technologies that are going to solve those problems, and to do it at cost and at scale. So Matter's bread and butter is R&D. That's what keeps the lights on. That's what we do. But education and legislation, for us, education is not about school kids. Those we talk to 7-year-olds and they know more about it than we do. They're amazing. They're incredible. The kids that are coming through. But when you're talking to policy people and the people that are involved in that, I think it's really super important that education piece runs through. So we've been campaigning for about 4 years on the microplastic bill in the UK. We've had second reading in the House of Parliament and House of Lords. I have a dedicated MP, Alberta Costa, who's working with us. We're working really hard on this. So we're then also part of the trade bodies that are around the world. So I'm involved with all the washing machine manufacturers, but also all the trade bodies to set the standards as well. So it's a little bit of what we do, but I mean, we do that in the evenings and weekends, if you like. It's not my 9 to 5, if you like. So that's been a big part of what we do, um, from the legislation perspective. And regarding the kind of like the space in the market, there are very few people in this space, and unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that is available are using disposables. A lot of the major filtration companies in the world are, you think about your car gets serviced and they replace the oil filters and things. Their business model is to have a recurring revenue. So what they want is disposables because it means they get to sell more filters. Um, if you are going to solve pollution that way, you will create more pollution than you solve. One of the competitors in the market, we see you throw away 186 grams of plastic to capture 6 grams of microplastic. Is just, if you went to 24 million washing machines in the UK, it would fail. Like the system would completely fail. So from a design perspective, I think it's super important that that we design things that are sustainable and scalable. I think that's a big part of what we do.
Fascinating. Okay, let's move on to the part of the podcast where we do talk about some of the key challenges and key achievements of your journey. They can be directly related to matter, or you can talk about in the context of your career. But yeah, tell us a little bit about some of your key achievements and key challenges.
Yeah, sure. I think what I mentioned earlier about like winning the Young Innovator of the Year award was a real key achievement for me. That was a big that was a big difference. I saw a significant step in that way. For the business, accelerators are incredible if you get them in the right way. Like we've got some. I think we've been on 5 accelerators as a business. Some people say, oh, you should only do one or do it in this way. But there are so many accelerators now. I mean, we got approached last week by Polish accelerators and Singapore accelerators, UAE. If you want to break into a new market, there will be a country-based accelerator that will pay you money. They will set you up licenses. They will bring you along. So, and there's also accelerators, things like getting on the Nasdaq, or you want to get on the AIM, so some of the stock markets. So they can be for growth companies as well as. And the way we see it is training. We use it as training in the business now. So if I want to bring someone up in the company, they've been really good little tips for us to use that and putting people through those programs. Challenges. I mean, we've had COVID, I was due to close a funding round the day before the UK government went into lockdown, and one of our investors, they cut total company valuation pretty much. I mean, all the stock market would by 40%. And it was like £22 billion off a balance sheet in a day. Like, we've had some challenges. Surviving through has been we're really, I'm just proud to still be here sometimes. Between COVID, Brexit, Ukraine crisis, building a supply chain over the last couple of years has been challenging, operating and running. Kudos to my team. They've just been just incredible, and they've just believed. Fundamentally, they've just given everything into this. I always find that often I don't know what I'm doing, or that we don't know where to go or what to do. I'll just get a few guys around, put some chairs out, and just say, "Look, this is where I am. This is what I'm trying to do. What do you think?" And let them solve it, because you often think that as a leader you have that responsibility to try to solve every problem, and the reality is that the people that you hire are much smarter than you, and they know exactly what to do. So it's always a good idea to kind of let those guys kind of do that. um, yeah, I mean, some of those bits have been challenges, some achievements as well. I mean, when we have something called a Love Your Lint campaign, which we started as a bit of fun, and it was basically you could send back your tumble dry lint, because everybody told us nobody was ever going to send back the microplastics from the filtration systems, and we were like, well, bet they will. So we set this scheme up, and we've just been inundated with material, and it's been amazing. So um, people have been sending us letters saying about how passionate they are about what we're doing, and we got 3,000 sign-ups over Christmas, and we didn't even know about it. We got put up in a news the Guardian newsletter, Guardian newspaper. They put us in the paper, and we just ended up getting emails just consistently coming through. We didn't even know it was going to happen. So there's been some massive highs, and also with that as well, there's been some super big challenges. It's 24 hours in Matter is pretty much like a week anywhere else. I think it's pretty fair to say.
It's obviously so incredible to imagine that in the not too distant future, such vast quantities of microfiber pollution are going to be captured at the source, and that's better for our planet and for our waterways, our environment, our ocean. What are some of the ways that you're looking to get creative with the material? It's obviously a bit of a blank canvas, right? You've got a material like lint and fibers. Like, what are some of the fun ways you hope to be able to repurpose and recycle it?
Yeah. So again, looking at the numbers, you got to focus on that. So for us, lowest carbon relationship between going from that fiber to the next product life. We've looked at it. We've got an insulation material which is working really well. We're really excited about that. It could be a really good replacement to some of the things that is going on. It's a very low carbon intensive thing, and the volume of material that's currently going down the drain is just terrifying. So it's a really great resource for a resource stripped planet. So that would be really good. For me, I think the long term vision for it is full circularity, and that is, I know, beyond ambitious, but I figure if you can do it with microplastic, you can do it with all plastics, and you can do it with all materials. It's understanding separation between those organic pieces of material and the technical pieces of material. um, how do you separate that out, and what does it look like? So there's some IP that we're looking to generate in that space, and hopefully make a real big impact. I think materials is going to be a very big future for Matter, but you got to do your first things first, right? So yeah, watch this space on that one, I think.
Yeah, we'll wrap up the podcast pretty soon. But on the industries piece, I was interested to see on your website, and your website's fantastic for people to go and look and see all the different areas and updates and things. But around tire dust and micro and nanoplastic particles from tires, which I don't know what the current science is saying, but it's probably up there with textile fibers. We had actually another podcast recently with Declan McAdams from Panovo, and his big claim is that paint might be the biggest source of microplastics. There's probably a bit of a race at the moment between textile fibers, tire dust, and paint particles. But yeah, can you tell us anything about what you're doing in the world of tires?
Yeah, definitely. So I think a lot of these numbers, by the way, for how they position is really about how many number of particles versus the weight. If you look at the heaviest microplastics, they're going to be car tires. If you look at the number of microplastic, it'd be fibers, or if it's fractional pieces, it's paint. I mean, paint's normally in the nano scale, but so there's huge there. I mean, whatever it is, it's bad news. I mean, fundamentally, for us, we don't really see a competition with this. It's just a case. The more people that can be in this space, the better. So I'd love to be surrounded by other people, and to be fair, it is coming. There is people really taking big chunks of that supply chain, which is amazing. But from a car tire perspective, for us, we started a project with the UK government where we started doing analysis of what was going on in some of the drains locally. So it depends on where you are in the regional parts, but you have combined sewers versus non-combined. And that effectively means if it's combined, it means you have the drainage from the roads and the sewage goes in the same pipe, and then it goes to the wastewater treatment plant and is supposedly filtered to then remove some of those parts. Often in the UK, they breached their permits last year by 400,000 times. So they're consistently pumping that raw sewage and the pollution out into the rivers and the oceans. In most countries, we've got a Victorian system here. It's the UK's got some pretty crazy heritage for we probably invented a lot of the sewage systems around the planet, and a lot of the new places will have non-combined, which is basically means that the road stuff goes straight out. So if you have a car and you are buying a new car tire every 3 years, where does that rubber go? and that fragments of those plastics are in the region about 0.3 microns, that kind of size. So that's small enough that you could breathe that in. It would go through your lungs and straight into your blood. There'd be no filtration for your lungs, wouldn't be able to deal with that. And that is a lot of the black you get up your nose. And when you go into a city, that black is carbon black. That's air pollution, and car tires are the same. It's related. So there's a huge opportunity here to do it. There's some great companies. The Tire Collective are doing some good stuff, and a lot of the tire manufacturers are saying they've got CSR schemes. They're doing some bits, but really with electrification, that tire pollution is going to increase because the torque is higher on electric cars. So I think it's going to be it's a really challenging space, and it requires some very different thinking. Fundamentally, the way that tires work is they're a traction driven by friction, and friction creates particles. So you can't get away from that, but you can reduce some of it, and then you need to really design out the problem. So it's always, they need to change the material that they use, not these horrible compounds of material. And then you need to kind of move towards having much cleaner water coming off the back of our road networks.
Talk about some opportunity areas for budding young entrepreneurs out there. Speaking of those budding young entrepreneurs, just a moment for you, I guess, to share. You have already throughout the podcast, which we thank you for, but one or two key bits of advice or learnings that you think is going to help people on their ocean impact journey.
Sure. I think fundamentally, like it's really important to kind of like understand that often you're the biggest limitation in what you can achieve. I think it's really important to understand exactly when you come to a hurdle, when you come to one of these really difficult crossroads, what is it that's really stopping you from doing that? I think also balance is very important. I think, anybody who's driven to be able to do this is, often, I work 80 hours a week, most weeks. It's hard to have a decent work-life balance when you're working that way. So support network is incredibly important. I remember when I've gone from earning a very good salary at a very good job to earning less than £100 a month for a long time. That is difficult. You need people around you that and I remember having conversations with people who I really care about, who are like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" Really, really trying to get me to change. They're like, "Go and do a good job," and parents and support like that. That is when you hear those things, it's very difficult to kind of pick yourself up. So it's important to surround yourself by the right person. And then my last thing really is just sort of, don't ever ask anybody to do anything for you, because they probably won't. But if you ask them who they know, they'll always be able to tell you exactly who they know that can help you. Everyone's very, very suggestive of all the people that they know that can help you. But if you ask them to do it, you'll get less a response. So just sometimes they volunteer themselves, but I always find the best thing to do is ask people that I know, do you know anyone who can help me with this problem? And then often you get connections really quickly, versus if you say, I really need you to do this thing, they're like, they don't have time, or they won't get back to you. So that's my experience, at least. Maybe a little secret tip.
Great tips, mate. Thank you. So wrapping up the podcast now, I've got just one last bit about the road ahead. So what do you got planned over the next 12 to 24 months? A chance to talk about anything you wanted to talk about today but haven't yet. And obviously the last bit is where people can follow you and support you and pre-order products, etc., etc.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks so much. I think 12 or 24 months is a very long time in our world. I'm looking to basically, we're currently raising, I'm raising a $10 million round. That's USD for Series A. So we're raising that at the minute. That's a big chunk, and that's really going to help us grow in what we do. We've got some of that committed already, and we're moving through. So that's happening right now. which is big. And if that happens, then when that happens, we'll be really driving a lot of these different parts of our business forward very quickly. We are hiring, so if you're looking for a new thing, you want to come work in sunny Bristol, do let us know. We're looking for good engineers. I'm currently looking for C-suite levels of people as well. So if you're interested, then please do get in touch. And then I think go to gulp.online. I definitely recommend to check out that and see if that product works for you, and give us some feedback as well. Follow us on. I think we've got Instagram. I'm not very social media friendly, but we definitely have Instagram, and I think we've got a TikTok. I'm on LinkedIn. Come say hey. Come follow some of the work that we're doing. And yeah, really, I think fundamentally, be your own little position of campaigning. Go and find out how you can make some change. If you send a letter to your local MP, Minister of Parliament, it will be a very big thing, because they work for you. Never forget that. They don't work for themselves; they work for you. So if you send them a letter, if you're in their constituents, they have to respond. So ask them the awkward questions: why they're not doing more. Ask them why they're not doing it. And that will. I did that the first time I did that. I managed to get. I got invited to the House of Commons to explain what I was doing. So don't ever give up.
Fantastic. I really have enjoyed this podcast episode, and thank you so much for opening up and taking us on the journey. Keep up the great work. We know you will.
Thanks so much.
Can't take the ocean.